It was August 15th, 1971. In one televised speech, President Richard Nixon ended over 2 centuries of financial tradition and shattered the last link between money and gold. But that wasn't the death of money. It was the birth of something far more powerful, the dollar's global empire, and its consequences are still unfolding today. This is the untold story of how a single announcement didn't just rewrite economics, it reshaped the global order itself. Let's rewind to the early 1900s. The global financial king was still the British pound. London was the center of world trade. Ships, banks, and empires all ran on sterling. But behind the power was a problem: war. World War I drained Britain dry. To fund it, the British government borrowed massively, printed money, and suspended the gold standard, the system that guaranteed each note was backed by real gold. When the war ended, the empire had victory, but not solvency. Britain owed billions to America. Across the Atlantic, something was shifting. The United States had become the world's factory and its creditor. Europe was broke. America was booming. Gold flowed into U.S. vaults, so much that by the 1920s, the United States held almost half the world's gold reserves. That made the dollar special, stable, trusted, and backed by gold when others weren't. But the real transformation didn't come from prosperity. It came from chaos. The Great Depression hit in 1929. Banks failed. People hoarded gold. Confidence vanished. In 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made a radical move. He banned private ownership of gold and forced citizens to exchange it for dollars. Then he reset the gold price higher, instantly devaluing the dollar. It was controversial, but it worked. The U.S. government had just centralized the nation's gold supply, giving Washington total control over the foundation of its currency. That control would soon change the world, because while America was rebuilding, the rest of the world was burning again. World War II erupted in 1939, and once more Europe turned to America, not for soldiers this time, but for money. The U.S. supplied weapons, food, and oil through the Lend-Lease program, and in return, gold poured into American vaults. By 1944, as the war neared its end, the United States held 2/3 of the world's gold. Every other major power was in ruins, except one. That's when 44 nations met in a quiet town in New Hampshire called Bretton Woods. Their mission: rebuild the global economy and decide what the new financial order would look like. In that room, the power balance was obvious. America had the gold, America had the credit, and America had the leverage. So the deal was simple. Every major currency would be pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar would be pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. That system made the US dollar the anchor of global finance. If a French or Japanese bank wanted to trade internationally, they needed dollars. If a government wanted gold, they had to go through Washington. And just like that, the dollar became the world's reserve currency. But here's the twist. America soon realized it could print global power. See, under Bretton Woods, other countries had to earn dollars by exporting goods to the U.S. But the U.S., it could simply print more dollars to pay for imports, aid, or wars. Dollars went out, goods came in, and the world accepted it. It was genius, until it wasn't. By the late 1960s, the math stopped adding up. The U.S. was spending billions on the Vietnam War and massive domestic programs while exporting more dollars than it had gold to back them. Other nations saw the writing on the wall. France, under President Charles de Gaulle, called America's bluff. He demanded gold in exchange for dollars and actually sent warships to New York to collect it. One by one, countries followed. Gold drained from Fort Knox, confidence cracked. Then, on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon made history. In a televised speech, he announced that the U.S. would no longer convert dollars to gold. Overnight, the world's currencies were cut loose from their metal anchor. The Bretton Woods system, dead. The dollar unbacked. But here's the twist. Instead of collapsing, the dollar got stronger. Why? Because even without gold, the world still needed dollars. Oil-producing countries priced crude in dollars. International trade was conducted in dollars. Global loans, bonds, and reserves, all dollar-denominated. And that wasn't an accident. In the 1970s, the U.S. struck a secret deal with Saudi Arabia and other OPEC nations. In exchange for U.S. military protection, oil would only be sold in dollars. That deal created the petrodollar, the invisible engine of American dominance. Every country that needed oil, which is every country, also needed dollars. From Tokyo to Tehran, Paris to Karachi, nations began stockpiling U.S. currency just to buy energy. And the U.S., it could now print money to buy oil, weapons, or influence, and the world would fund it by holding that very same currency. Debt became America's greatest export. Today, roughly 60% of global reserves and 90% of foreign trade use the U.S. dollar. Even China, America's top rival, stores over $1 trillion in U.S. bonds. That means every time the Federal Reserve prints more money, the whole world pays attention, because that decision moves markets, shifts wealth, and decides who wins or loses. But this system has cracks. The same mechanism that made the dollar powerful also made it dangerous. When the U.S. prints trillions, inflation ripples worldwide. When America raises interest rates, emerging economies crumble. The dollar isn't just America's currency anymore, it's everyone's problem. And that's why today nations are quietly looking for a way out. China's pushing the digital yuan. BRICS countries talk of a shared reserve currency. Even the IMF experiments with special drawing rights. But no rival has yet replaced the dollar's trust, or America's might. Because at its core, this isn't about paper or pixels, it's about belief. People trust the dollar not because it's backed by gold, but because it's backed by America's economy, military, and global reach. That belief built the dollar empire, and like all empires, it will last until belief runs out. From gold bars to oil barrels to digital code, every step in the dollar's rise came from one question: what gives money its power, metal, markets, or the promise behind it? The U.S. found the answer and built a financial empire instead of a territorial one. But if history has taught us anything, it's this: empires built on belief don't fall overnight. They erode slowly, then suddenly, and the cracks are already showing. If you thought paper money changed the world, wait till you see how the petrodollar system is now being challenged, and how that challenge could decide the next global power.